to my Accent is No Accent podcast. I'm your host, Maritza Perez, and we are here today with a very special person that I have known for ever since I started my company, Jennie Eriksen. She's going to show us today how to use our voice. Jennie Eriksen is a seasoned professional voiceover artist with 15 years experience, having lent her voice to projects spanning over 70 countries. Her versatile voice has effectively conveyed a multitude of messages for her clients globally. Additionally, Jennie is the co-founder of Event Raptor, a virtual event management system aimed at facilitating seamless connections between hosts and speakers worldwide. She is passionate about simplifying the process of running virtual events and fostering global collaboration in the event industry. Welcome, Jennie. It is an honor and a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Maritza. I'm very much looking forward to chatting with you.
I know I was very happy to have you here because I love your messages.
Thank you.
Before we get into the conversation, let me ask you our first question. Jennie, what is your accent and why is that an accident?
Okay, what is my accent? Well, as you can tell, I'm British. And in the UK, we have tons and tons of different accents, even very, very close together. So if you listen to me, you can hear I've actually got a southern accent. So I'm actually from the south of England, and I'm from in England, we have London, and then we have what are called the home counties, which are small little counties around London. So even though most people think I've got a London accent, which I have essentially, I've actually got a home counties accent. I'm from the county of Essex. Now, it's funny because there is a program in the UK, which is all about people from Essex. And a lot of those people are people that have come from London over the years and have ended up in Essex. But the original Essex accent was not as you might hear it on the TV now. So essentially, I am an Essex girl, but most people think I'm a Londoner. And why is it not an accident? Well, actually, I'm very proud to be British. And also, I'm very proud that wherever I go, my accent doesn't change. So when I've spent periods of time in different places, for example, here I am living in Norway, that it's not an accident. I'm very proud of it, and it's something I've cultivated. And of course, it's something that I've been able to use for the greater good to narrate for lots of different countries and companies, of course.
And I love that. I love that you took us on a trip to London and now all the way to Norway, where you are living now, and you have been living there for a while.
Yeah.
Yes, tell me about that difference in culture, the difference in accent.
It's interesting. There is a huge difference in culture. It's very easy for people to think that Europe is one big continent, and of course it is. But the variance is in between different countries, even Scandinavian countries. There's lots of differences. So I guess in the UK we're quite noisy people, very chatty, whereas Scandinavian countries are a little bit more succinct. They're not going to say lots of things that they don't need to say. So it's no coincidence the Norwegian language doesn't have a word for everything in the British language. So you can't say the same words because they don't actually exist. There is a big difference in culture, big difference in the way we speak. Obviously, the phraseology is tipped in a different way. The lovely thing is, of course, both of our children are bilingual. So both of our children both speak Norwegian and English. And actually, we lived a little time on one of the Canary Islands, so they also speak Spanish as well, which is lovely. I haven't quite mastered the art of the Norwegian language because I guess having the British language, there is so many ways of saying different things, and I really like that. I like the fact that we've got lots of different words for things, and so it's making the transition isn't always easy, but of course, my work is all in English. So my opportunity to use Norwegian is quite rare, actually. And of course, here in Norway and lots of Scandinavian countries, the English language is very, very well used. Most people here speak English. Even little tiny tots that go to school learn English at a very early age.
Oh, incredible. I didn't know that. That is beautiful. So the fact that probably is the same thing if I was to learn Norwegian, because Spanish has specific words for many things. So probably that will be, I will have probably a similar experience than what you're having between the English and the Norwegian. And it is true, even though there are countries that are among the same continent, the cultures are diverse, the cultures are different. And then you have to learn how to merge in with the culture without losing who you are, without losing your accent. What I like to call who you are is your accent, that the little, bold letters in your script. And yours is beautiful, Jennie, because you help people use their voice.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And you're right as well. When you live in different countries too, it's about embracing the culture. There are lots of, Norway, for example, is very multinational, as is England. And there are lots of people that they bring their own cultures too, but they also embrace the culture, which I think is important. So Norway, for example, is very much steeped in tradition, in terms of flags and national costumes and all that kind of thing, as was true with the Canary Islands when I lived in Tenerife. Lots of different things like, parades in the street, lots of things to do with the church and celebrations and stuff. And that's the joy of living somewhere else, is that you get to be part of that as well. So that's always delightful.
Excellent. So how did you get to be a voiceover? What brought you there?
For me, my story is when we were living on the island of Tenerife, I was actually helping at a theatre school, the kids who were preparing for their LAMDA exam, which is the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art. So I was helping the kids who do musical theatre, so singing, dancing, acting, that kind of thing, using my voice. So voice is very important, even with young children, especially when they're wanting to get the good grades in their accents. The things that we say, the tonality, the nuance, the pace, the light and shade, the cadence, all those things related to voice. It started from there. And I can't actually remember the first story, but I recorded something for somebody and then somebody else heard it. And it was a bit of a snowball effect from there, that, recording something morphed into that becoming a career. So fast forward to today, 15 years down the line, as you rightly say, 70 plus countries now, if I can count correctly, which is fantastic, to think that, you can hear me in 70 different places is an honor, to be honest.
I am amazed at that. So I didn't know that part of you. I only knew about Event Raptor, but I didn't know about the voiceover. So I am amazed and mesmerized, because in 70 different countries, your voice is recognized more than, people don't see your face, but your voice is recognized. And that is beautiful, because it tells us how important our voice is the way we communicate. And I would like you to talk more about what is that importance in our voice, and how can that help us?
When I work with clients, it's very easy. When people look at voiceover, well, anybody can do it because we can all talk. And when I work with a client, it's about looking at what they want from the voice. What is the story? If I'm narrating, for example, a video, what is the story? What am I trying to convey? It's not just about going in front of a microphone and narrating the words. It's how do I then tell the story? How do I lend myself well to the journey of the story, if you like? If I'm narrating an e-learning course, what exactly are you looking for from me? For example, there's a big company that I narrate for. They do, a lot of their work is very technical, and people have to pass particular exams. but they don't want people to feel foolish if they answer questions incorrectly. So my voice has to convey, not only am I imparting the information, but I, certain parts that are recorded where I say, oh, yes, that's correct, or no, that's not right. The no, that's not right they don't want somebody authoritarian saying, well, no, that's not right. They want something, no, that's not right. But, here's why. And so very much I'm asking lots of questions of clients, even for a telephone system. What would you want from a telephone system? What's the ethos of your company? And so I can convey that. So I'm, if you like, for a lot of people, a satellite member of their team. So often I get clients come to me and say, can you narrate another module of the e-learning? We've got some more information for the telephone tree, or remember you narrated those stories, can you do it again? Because we've already established what they're looking for. And so there's very much a, can you just replicate as you did before? So no two narrations are really the same, because you really are digging deep. And actually sometimes a client themselves are not sure, oh gosh, we've never been asked that before. Or, well, we're a friendly company, but we this, or we would like that to be in a certain way. So it's very interesting to be part of that journey, and for somebody to entrust you with their message. There's an awful lot of important messages that I've conveyed, even down to something like health and safety. If you think the way you're saying something is related to health and safety, or saving somebody, or whatever it may be, it's a huge privilege, and never take it for granted.
Yes, and I like that, because one of the ways that people don't realize is how our voice has an impact on others, and it changes the message depending on what is the inflection of your voice. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you might be extremely excited and say something, but if it is over the phone, it might not sound excited. It might sound like you're shouting. Exactly. Things like that. Yes.
Yeah. And with things like video production, if somebody's creating a video, it's actually easier to create the voiceover first, because sometimes when somebody creates a video and then they want a narration to go with it, the timing doesn't quite work sometimes, because often if you're narrating something, you're narrating in different ways and in different speeds, for example. So you might be telling a tale, if for something that's advertising, saying, well, this happens and that happens and things are not very good. And then there's a turning point in the narration where you're adding hope. So perhaps your pace will ramp up and things will change and your cadence will change. And sometimes if somebody's created something and they'll say, here's a script, and you look at it, it doesn't actually fit, because there is a point where a pause in narration is just as powerful as the narration itself. Often, example, when people go to networking meetings and they know they've got a minute or 2 minutes to speak, and they're literally cramming everything in at 90 miles an hour because they think, and blah, 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 and we're missing everything because they think that, they need to cram in as much as possible, but less is actually more. Pauses are super important, because pauses actually speak a volume in what we're saying. It's what we're not saying is powerful. It's that beat, if you like, that makes people think. And often that's the beat where you go from a journey of perhaps despair into a journey of hope and such. So, and just to talk on that also, I'm often asked to narrate for another country. So something else I do is where a narration is done in a particular country, and then they want the English version of it. And I do that a lot for a Spanish company. And of course, the Spanish language is much quicker than the English language. So I have to really not just ramp up my speed, but add a little bit of technology too, in order to fit. So something that somebody might say in 5 seconds in a Spanish narration might be 8 seconds in British English or American English. So 3 seconds doesn't sound a lot, but it's a huge amount of time. So there's often some thing to do there. And you've got to remember there has to be the inflection too. You're still telling the story. So it's always very interesting and challenging when those projects come in, but nonetheless, they're always fun to do. So
I have done translation from the script from a video, and one of the things that I relate to what you're saying, and I see it now from a different perspective, because when you translate from the script from a video from English to Spanish, sometimes they give you times and you're like, there is no way I can say this. And
Exactly.
from English to Spanish, we use more words in Spanish, but now you're saying we are also speaking very fast when we do, if the video was to be the other way around. That is
Yeah.
very interesting.
It's certainly a challenge, and pretty much every time I do it, it works. And sometimes there is a little bit of grace in terms of the video that you can add a little something. But I can't, as a speaker, I can't speak that quickly because you lose your articulation if you try to do something. And of course, the articulation is important because the message is still important. So with technology, you can do things like speed things up a little bit. In the US, of course, you have those adverts where you hear the bit at the end where blah, 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 blah. And of course, that's all, somebody has narrated that as fast as possible. And then technology has enhanced it to make it fast. Yeah, absolutely. That's a particular language that it is much faster than the English language, for sure.
Incredible. And then now we have how to convey our message through our voice, but then how do we actually deliver that message? How we build the message before? Do we build it according to the audience, or do we build it according to what we want to say, or a combination of both?
I guess a combination of both. I guess a networking meeting would be a good example. We always say, we actually have a networking meeting, and we say to people, specificity is important. And that's a good old voiceover word, specificity, which is trickier to say than to be. So be specific. What is it you do? Who is it you serve? What is it you're looking for? But also delivering your message as you is super, super important. So when people try to tell you, and this is something we've spoken about, to try to tell you to speak a certain way, to be a certain something, what happens is your body is not going to lean into that. The best way to deliver your message is to be very clear on what it is you're saying, but to deliver it as you, because you are you. And when you do that, there is a congruency between what comes out of your mouth and your body language, because you're not trying to be something you're not. And that makes you appealing. And the French, here we are talking languages, the French call it je ne sais quoi. Sometimes you might hear somebody say at a networking meeting, you think, oh, I love what they're saying, but you're not quite sure why, or there is something that's super attractive about them. There's an aura or something. And that's because they're good on their message, they're comfortable with their message, and they're delivering their message as themselves. And that's what's super important. And, to deliver it in that way that is appealing to other people, and not to try and be something that you're not. So, as a voiceover, I'm not one size fits all. If somebody says they want a British voiceover, I'm not necessarily your person. I can audition for something, and I can look at the audition piece. I can understand what I think it is, and I think I meet the brief. And when I send it off, I'm genuinely sending it off as what I think is great. But somebody else might get it. And so I can be upset about that. And of course, if you think this is a lovely project, of course you might be. But then when the client is listening, there is something in their head that they want to hear. And I maybe just didn't nail it, or maybe I do nail it and somebody else doesn't nail it, and they think, wow, what I sent off was fantastic. So leaning into the way you are is the best way of delivering your message, whether that's a networking message or whatever it may be. It just comes across that congruency of body and sound.
And so being authentic with yourself, and deliver a message as soon as you feel comfortable, that you are delivering a good message, because it's not something forced.
Exactly. Right. So being memorable for the right reasons, because when you're trying to be something that you're not, people will we all get judged. Oh my goodness, there they go. They're going to do the presentation. That's not how they speak in real life. And so, with speaking, when we're, networking meetings, again, is a good example. We're wanting to build rapport with people. These are potentially people we might work with or who might introduce us to somebody we know. That authenticity is super important. But if you put on a fake voice or a fake way of delivery, it's just clunky and it just doesn't work. And then, people are suspicious. Well, if you always do that, are you being a sincere person? Your natural voice, when you deliver the message, the things you want to say in your way, the authenticity is most important for sure.
Hi, I'm very happy to know you are here watching our podcast today. It is an honor to be featuring so many entrepreneurs on the journeys of their inside voice, their accent that is not an accident. And we want to reach out more people like you who are creating a better world of diversity, inclusiveness, equity, and belonging. So please take a moment to hit the subscribe button below, like, and share to others. And even if you want to leave a comment, that'll be nice. Thank you for your support. And now back to the episode.
Yes, and to be clear, when you're saying you're not changing, not acting it. However, many times when we are, like, for instance, for me, I have, like, even in the podcast, I have to speak in a most more slower pace than I usually do. Like if I was speaking with my friends and family, because I know that what I'm saying, it has to be understood. And I don't want to put, words together or make it even more difficult for me to say certain things. But still, you have to have your personality in it. You have to be able to convey who you are with your messages. I like this very much because it serves not only to write down your marketing messages, but it also serves the speakers how to deliver a message that you want to convey to the audience, and that you want the audience to capture what you are saying.
A good rule of thumb is 150 words a minute and that's a little bit, that's pretty about the speed I'm speaking now, is a good speed to deliver a message. So if somebody says, a networking meeting and everybody gets a minute to speak, have a play around with 150 words. So for a lot of people, they'll bring an A4 pad or a legal pad and think, there's my message. It's not that long. It's 150 words. What can you say in 150 words that is going to be impactful? And then you'll get pushback from people saying, I can't tell you everything I do in 150 words. That's not possible. You're right. It's not. What you're doing is giving people a flavor of what you do in order to continue the conversation. So there will be people that will push back and go, I can speak more quickly than that. And in fact, when we watch things like the news on TV, the news is probably about 180-ish, 200 words a minute. But we're not listening to every single word. When we watch things like the news, we dip into things that are interested, things that have happened in our town or politics or the royal family or whatever it is we listen to. So we kind of tune in and out. But if we're wanting to be heard, about 150 words is a good measure. And if you squeeze more in, then you run the risk of people actually not hearing what you say. And often people will squeeze something in at the end, especially if there's a timer going, people are being timed, and they'll squeeze in the last part of their message. And that's often their strap line, what they're known for as a company. And what they've done is missed an opportunity because they've said something really, really quickly and people haven't heard it and they've lost that moment. And I don't advocate anybody dropping their mic, but when you deliver a message, it is that mic drop moment. It's being able to leave gaps in something, but also to finish in a way so that people have heard every word. You still might not be for them, your service or your product or whatever, but at least people have heard you.
Look at that. That is very important. And then this comes because of your experience with voice as a voiceover artist. You can tell how many minutes per word you know, a group of words. So for instance, I have to go back. I'm like thinking about my pitch when I go to networks. The first thing I'm going to look now is like, is it 150 words or is it or less, so that I can actually convey the message in its completion, so that people don't go, what did she say?
Yeah,
That is.
And also, we don't always read our messages verbatim when we go to a networking meeting. So we're looking at what we want to say, and then it might be, we look at those people in networking meetings. We think, how did they do that? But people have things like mind maps by the side of them. They can see the points. I've got to remember to mention this, 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 this. People have sticky notes, different coloured Post-it notes to as a reminder how to say different things. But yes, I mean, that's a ballpark. But often, there will be instances where somebody says, "Oh, this meeting, we're a bit brutal. You've got 30 seconds to do an introduction." So it's about building, if you like. It's a bit like Lego bricks. What can you say in, in 10 seconds about what it is you do? What can you say in 20, in 30, in a minute? At a networking meeting, somebody says, "Oh, we will do it." Everybody has an opportunity to speak for 5 minutes. What does it look like in 5 minutes? 10 minutes? Somebody says, "Can you do a talk or a podcast?" So how do you add those different elements as well? So in 5 minutes, I can't say this and this, but I can say that and that. So if you think of it like Lego blocks, what chunks can you, how can you mix it up also to keep your message fresh, and so people don't go, "Oh, here's the person talking and I'm going to tune out for a minute because I know what they're going to say." How are you playful with what you say? How are you adding something different that makes people, "Oh my goodness, I haven't heard them say that before." So lots of different ways.
So for instance, a tagline might not be always a good thing to say when you're in a networking and you have 30 seconds. There are sometimes you have 30 seconds and sometimes you have a minute or two. But if you have 30 seconds, maybe you want to tell them who you are in lieu of your tagline, because then you're probably not going to have time to give your name and who you are.
If you have a tagline that is so compelling, and I do know people that have amazing taglines, it's a very clever tool, because it's a good way, especially if you've got a name of your company or a surname or something where people remember you, then it's great, because then almost people get to remember that about you. Or I can't remember their name, but they say that thing at the ends. But what a lot of people do is waste their time. So straight out of the gate, when they've only got an amount of time, they might go, "Oh, thank you very much for having me, and it's really great to be here." Wow, you just lost 10 seconds. So now you've only got 20 seconds. And then, of course, when somebody says at the end, "Oh, well, that's your time," and it's, "Well, I didn't say everything." It's because you didn't come straight out of the gate and say, I'm this person. Quite often you'll find with children, "My name is this," but we can say things like, if you're going to own, or from the get-go, if you're going to own it, "I'm Jennie Eriksen." I never say, "My name is Jennie Eriksen." I say, "I'm Jennie Eriksen," because that's who I am. My name is what children might say. So straight out of the gate, "I'm this," etc. Then I have different elements of things that I can say, mixing up my message. Because if you mix up your message, people will listen in. Because otherwise they think, "Oh, well, I know what they're going to say. They say the same thing every week, every month, or whatever." What about posing a question? So I often say to people when I'm helping them with their messaging, say something at the beginning, like, rather than saying "my name is" or whatever, "Picture this." And automatically we think, "Oh, what are you going to say?" Because if I say "picture this" to you, I could be telling you something about my daughter, or I might be setting the scene about my business, or I could be telling you about the vacation I went on. So anything we can add that is a bit of a disrupt or something playful or memorable is going to set us apart. So,
so these are things that we usually listen to over and over again, but then they are not as specific as what you're talking today. And I love the specificity that you are saying.
There you go.
That you put together with the message and your voice, making sure that you're authentic, making sure you're comfortable with the message, and making sure that people are compelling to what you are saying, but also that they will remember you. That is a very important part, that they will remember you. So
Yes.
it is more important to not to speak fast, but important to say, even if people will say, I love how she talk. I love how he talk.
Exactly. There is. That's why it's something we were talking, previously about. That's why it's important to embrace where you're from and your accent, because you are you. That's the important thing. It's not about trying to be something that you're not. For example, as I say, I can get offered things that think would be lovely to do, but it's not in my expertise, or it's not the way that I work, and I have to trust the process. That if I pass that on to somebody I know that can nail the brief, that something will come along that's right for me. I read a story recently in a voiceover community. Somebody had turned up at a studio and said, they were British. They said, they needed somebody who was Welsh. Now, Welsh, it's the didn't have to speak the Welsh language, but they had to have a Welsh accent, which is a particular accent to do. They turned up at a studio. There were important people there. They were putting this towards some kind of film or something. A lot of people had taken a lot of time out. This person couldn't do a Welsh accent. They couldn't. They'd sent a snapshot of something or a little something, but they couldn't meet the brief. So what it did was it wasted the studio's time. They had to recast it. But more than anything, what it did was put a bit of a red flag against this person. Can this person be trusted? To deliver. So our reputations are everything. If you pretend to be something that you're not.
Exactly. So one of the things that it is very important that you mention it, and you're talking about accents, is that yes, for instance, people like me who come from other country, and my first language is Spanish, and now I live in US and I have to learn English. And if I moved to London, I would have had to also learn English. But let's put it this way. If I move to London, there is no way I'm going to have a British accent, right? So I cannot change my accent and who I am, because it's me. I mean, you cannot take an eraser, and change it. It's not AI. So what you have to do is just speak the language, try to enunciate the words the best you can, and learn it very well.
Exactly.
But love your accent, because it's who you are.
Exactly. There are parts of England, and I'm sure it's true of the US too, where you have really pronounced accents where people don't understand each other very well. Now, there are even though England is a small country, it's got 60 million people in it, and there are lots of different regional accents dotted around. And so especially when you add things like jargon and extra words or local words, you can have people saying things and you think, what on earth did they say? And you live in the same country as them, but they're using their regional accent. And it's funny because accents are the joy of what I do is that I get to go to meetings literally all around the world at the touch of a button, which I think is a huge privilege. I speak to a lady in Australia who comes from Liverpool in England, and listening to an Australian Liverpool accent is it's quirky. I met somebody this week who's a lovely man. He comes from the northeast of England, but he lives in Scotland. So you've got two accents going on because it's muddled. But so there's a really eclectic mix. And I'm sure even with Spanish, the Spanish language, when I lived in Tenerife, it's Spanish, but it's not as you would speak in mainland Spain. It's more of a dialect kind of thing. So I think accents are fascinating.
I know they kind of it's like a birthmark, I call it. Your accent is your birthmark. part of it, because it tells where you are, where you came from, your heritage. It says so many beautiful things about you. And even though you have an accent, you can still be a speaker in another language. The importance is, again, to feel comfortable, to not try to say words that you're going to stumble upon, like while you are talking, and be yourself, be authentic, like you were saying.
Absolutely. I've literally, before seeing you today, I went to a meeting where I was the only British person there, and everybody else was Scandinavian, predominantly Swedish, and they were all speaking English. And how amazing when people say, oh, I don't understand you or what you're saying. I would respectfully say to a lot of people, can you speak a second language? And a lot of people who are critical can't speak a second language. Kudos to people that speak more than one language, because there's all that processing going on in your head. My husband is Norwegian and his English is amazing. But when you think that somebody is speaking sometimes 2 and 3, and I've met people who speak 4 and 5 languages, how amazing is that? But when you're speaking, it's about the delivery. It's about being comfortable with the words and how you say the words. And sometimes I get asked to narrate. If somebody has written a book and somebody will say, could you narrate it? How you write something isn't necessarily how you narrate it. So often if I'm reading something, it makes sense when you read it, but then when you articulate it, there are perhaps some clumsy words that are together. And it's a little bit difficult to say. So again, as a speaker, you would think that if you're going to be on an interview or speaking or whatever, words that work well together, that's the planning around speaking.
And I love this because it is important to also know your own limits and your boundaries, and know that, for instance, I know that if I am preparing to speak in an event, you need to be conscious of not saying those difficult words that are going to make you stumble upon, and then you totally missed, or your audience totally missed the message, because now they're concentrated on the word that you couldn't say.
Exactly. And you yourself, your body will be nervous about that word. So as I mentioned, all voiceover people, well, most of us anyway, have words that we don't like saying very much. So for me, to divulge my secret, digital. See, in an instance, I can say to you the word digital, digitalize. There you see, I'm stumbling. When I get a narration to do that, of course I'm going to do it, but the virtual cutting room floor, or the blooper reel is an awful lot of because that's not a word that is good for me. I can say it in isolation, but I narrated something a while back that was about the digital environment, the digitalization, the digital. It was all the way through. Now that was a challenge, and when I listen back to myself, I can almost hear that tiny beat where I can, Jenny's brain is going, oh, here comes the word again. But, would I use that if I were going to do my own talk or whatever? No, I wouldn't. I might say it once, but I'm certainly not going to concentrate on a word or a phrase or something that is just going to make me stumble. Because whether we think it's noticeable or not, it is. Our body kind of ramps up to it. I can, even sitting in your seat narrating it, you can see the second line down, there's that word, and you can feel it's, oh my goodness, here it comes.
Yes,
so
yes, and that is like what sometimes I feel like that. And sometimes I'm just very authentic and I say, well, I'm going to try to say this word. If I have to read a bio and it has a word that I'm like, oh, then I say, okay, I'm going to try to say this word the best as I can.
Mm-hmm.
And then I that kind of like also puts you in a different state of mind of saying, everybody knows that I'm not going to be able to say it exactly as an American or somebody that is speaks English from the time they were born.
Yeah, exactly. And if you stumble on a word, if you're giving a talk at a networking meeting or something, laugh about it. Because, what's the worst that can happen? I can't believe somebody would think, well, I'm not going to give them my business or refer them because they can't say that particular word. It's endearing. Obviously, if a client for a voiceover wants something, then you have to say it right. But people are very forgiving, and you can have fun with something. If you get so oversensitive about it, then that's just going to show. Be playful with it. And as I say, so many people who are ultra critical are not people that can maybe speak more than one language. So
yes, I love this. So how do you use your voice to be visible, Jennie?
well, we created Event Raptor 3 years ago. Should I say my husband did? Because we wanted to run our own events. We'd been in the virtual world for such a long time. And as mentioned, when the global interrupt came a few years back, an awful lot of people weren't sure how to press a button and to be able to tap into a global community. And both my husband and I, we're introverts. I'm just a noisy introvert, but we're both introverts. And one of the worst things you can say to both of us is, "Oh, I'm the best kept secret," because I think that's a shame. We meet so many people, and it's such a privilege to meet them, who teach wonderful things, share wonderful things, empower people, and yet they're not using their voice. They're not visible. They are, well, the best kept secret, or what they think is the best kept secret. So we created Event Raptor because we wanted to give people the opportunity to be seen and heard. And, often the things we speak about are not just things that happen in the US or the UK or whatever. If you have something that you teach or some wisdom you can impart that will empower or inspire somebody in Australia or in Azerbaijan, and you're in the US or whatever. So more than ever in a digital world, we have that amazing ability to connect with other people, and visibility is important. And even if you're a massive introvert or you're shy, the momentum is everything. Start small and find those places where you feel that sense of belonging, whether that's a networking meeting or a group of your particular, a coaching group or something to do with a hobby or activity. Find those places that matter to you and be visible, be out there, and not be the best kept secret.
I like that so much. I love it. And then we're getting close to the end, and I would like to give you the opportunity to tell our audience how they can find you.
Well, thank you so much. Well, if you need voiceover, then that's lovelyvoice.com. So that's my website, which needs updating, I must say. But nevertheless, that's where you can find snippets of me talking and doing my voiceover thing. For Event Raptor, eventraptor.com. So that's where we very much work with people who are speakers, coaches, event organizers, to help them make those global connections and to put on virtual events that inspire people all over the world. So yeah, that's I hang out in the virtual world, but it's a lovely place to be, and a privilege to meet people from all over the world, and I never take that for granted.
And I love this because the two names of the companies, Lovely Voice, it just says it all. And then Event Raptor. I love the part of the Raptor, and I understand now that I spoke to you why the name and what is the message that you want to give out there. So, Jennie, it's been a pleasure having you with us today.
It's been delightful. Thank you.
Thank you. So what we get today from our conversation is that you can use your voice to be visible. And also, you have to be authentic, comfortable. You need to not try to be something you're not. Being memorable for the right reasons. Speak 150 words a minute is the best speed that you can speak in a meeting or a networking. When needed to be less time, be careful with what you want to say. Make sure you say who you are. And if you want to run an event, run it by Jennie and Steve at eventraptor.com. Thank you so much, Jennie. Is there any other last thought that you would like to leave the audience with?
I think you summed it up very nicely, actually. Although your summary points were great. Be you, celebrate your voice, be you, use your authentic voice to get out there and make those wonderful connections, and just be you.
Amen to that. Thank you so much, Jennie. And Steve, who is probably in the background somewhere.
He is in the background somewhere, yeah.
So thank you so much. And to you, my audience, remember, you came to this world because of greater source, God, right here with love, to be loved and love one another. Till next time. Bye.
Hi, it's Maritza here. If you like this episode of My Accent is No Accident podcast and would like to listen more like this, subscribe wherever you're listening to it or watching it. Leave us a nice review and share with your friends, family, and network. Thanks for listening.